representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. We made it. We made it all the way to the end, the finish line of this 2024 Marlins season, the FOF Live 2024 regular season finale, presented by Burger and Hicks. Also, the finale of that sponsorship with them. Thank you so much to them for supporting our show throughout the entire season. Eli Sussman, Nate Karsmer, Alex Carver from Fish on the Farm, our special guest, our super sub. This has been somewhat of an annual tradition. Gabriel Revilla. I think this is 3 straight years where you've hopped on the final show of the season.
Yep.
Yeah, and it is a hurricane-themed episode, as you can tell by what I'm wearing on the football field, and also for Hurricane Helene that is passing through a big portion of the U.S., including Gabe's neck of the woods, just bringing a lot of rain. So in case anybody that's watching this is somewhat in the path of that, wishing you the best, hoping everything goes smoothly and you make it through completely intact. We're going to talk a lot of big picture stuff on this show, starting off, though, with just the most recent events, because just so happened that the previous Marlins game was one of the more interesting ones that we had this entire season long. I know Nate stayed up really late watching the whole thing, and then he woke up early finishing the recap on it. So if you could just walk us through, Nate, everything that happens that you found notable. Longest game that the Marlins have played in several years, and they end up knocking out a team that it was actually trying to win and make the playoffs on the stretch.
It was a roller coaster, to say the least. For the first 5 innings, Valente Belloso did his thing. 8 of his 15 outs recorded were all in the air, of course. Just one final classic Valente Belloso batting to send us out. And then things started to get a little weird. Carlos Correa he was a madman at separate. He hustled down the line to end the game. But he was 3 for 3, and he was really leading that the Twins comeback. Then, of course, everyone's favorite Marlins draft pick they stepped on, Brooks Lee, came through with a big 2-out double off of Jesus Tinoco, who looked human yesterday for the first time in a little bit. Gets extra innings. Who scored that run? I believe it was a Jonah Bride sat fly. Twins come back and score another. Then some very, very poor situational hitting on the Twins' end when the Marlins Twins score on the 11th or 12th. I forgot their catcher's name, but he got a bunt down, couldn't get a bunt down, popped it right up to Jonah Bride. And they doubled him up, and then Otto Lopez and Griffin Conine came through in the 13th. It was a very fun game, one of the most fun games of the entire season, in my opinion, especially that then with the win. And I have nothing against the Minnesota Twins, but just so, might as well spoil their chance of making the playoffs. Not like the chances were super slim anyway, but just to do it even more, why not? But yeah, very fun game. Jesus Sanchez had 3 hits. Xavier Edwards had 2 more hits. He looks like himself again. So a lot to look forward to, and I'm sorry for the Twins fans, but at least the Marlins got to leave the building with a very, very fun game.
The similarities just to 2 years ago were really striking to me. When the Marlins were in Milwaukee, it was the exact same game of the season. It was game 159 of the season, and the Brewers last year were just on the outside looking in the wild card race, and it went the exact same way. It went into extra innings. They were using a lot of pitchers that weren't necessarily high on the depth chart, the Marlins were, and still getting out of these jams, still taking advantage of unforced mistakes. And
I've got to point out one more thing. Derek Hill's catch in the bottom of the 10th, I believe, that was one of the most impressive catches I've seen all season. He covered, I think, over 100 feet, and he was going 29 feet per second. That was extremely impressive. And also, the get up here. I don't know how he did that, but to get that ball in, and it was coupled by some poor base running at second base, but that was also one of the big highlights. So big props to Derek.
Almost looks like he did some breakdancing.
Just breakdancing, yeah. It looked painful. When I saw that happen, my first thought was, and again, this is a very similar play that happened earlier this year, where the Marlins were in Citi Field, and Derek Hill made a great catch deep in center field, and he falls down, and the Mets tried to tag. They had a runner. They had the bases loaded in this situation, but I was thinking, is the runner on seconds going to try to score on this? Because look how far away he is, and he's on the ground. So that's why there's that hurry to get up, because there was that example earlier this year of the same situation where they end up getting the runner out with an amazing relay, but otherwise that could have decided the game. That could have been the game tying run already scored, but the game winning run could have scored right there if he doesn't get up, if he doesn't do whatever that acrobatic move is to get on his feet and then make the play and get the ball in. Wow. And like, there is precedent in Marlins history. I was mentioning just 2 years ago in Milwaukee, and then I'm sure Gabe and Carver, you both remember back in 2007 against like the Mets, where the Marlins at the end of the year, Marlins are out of the race and they're on the road and they play spoiler in that situation too.
Yeah.
And I guess it's something, right? Because for this organization that's only made the playoffs 4 times in their history, in most situations, if you're out of it at the end, at the very least, you can take a little consolation that they play well in those critical moments against teams that are so close, and the Marlins are the ones that ultimately stand in their way of getting to their own goals.
Yeah.
The Marlins end up winning this series, taking 2 out of 3 against the Twins. And now they just have 1 series remaining against the Blue Jays to finish out this entire season. But as promised, I did want to do some big picture talk on the show about this 2024 season. This is going to be the last stream that we do, of course, for the end of the regular season. The draft is on Sunday. And it has been, by any measure, a really disappointing year for this team, no matter where your expectation levels were. Last year, winning 84 games. Now this year, 20-plus games worse than that, just 1 year to the next, even with a lot of familiar faces in there. What are we going to remember from this season? Like Gabe, when we try to look back on this season in the future, what storylines or what individual people do you think represent, for better or worse, and mostly for worse, represent what this season has been?
Man, that's a good question. I think losing. I know that when we really look at it, losing guys like Jazz, losing Arias. I mean, those were kind of monumental moments for us as fans. I think most of us, if not all of us, probably when Arias left, we kind of all knew this is done. But then I think what kind of sealed it was the leaking information with Skip Schumacher there of him potentially not renewing his contract. If he resigns with the Marlins, oh my gosh, that would be amazing. 99% probably chance that that's not going to happen. But yeah, I was actually thinking about something similar to this. Would we consider 2024 to be a year of a fire sale, as bad as say 2024, something like that? I don't know. What do you guys think? Is it a fire sale? Is it a restart? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I label it more as a restart, but one that you touched on a couple of things right there that were top of mind for me. Those 2 particular moments, I would say the Skip one being number 1 in terms of how strange it is for somebody coming off the very first year on the job, doing exactly what he was supposed to do in that job and have a team that exceeds expectations, to have him be recognized by the entire league as one of the best at what he does. And then within a few days of the season starting, you find out that he's on his way out, that the contract has been restructured, that a guy that is, you could quibble about how important a manager actually is and what they truly influence. But for somebody that was exactly what they seem to be looking for, and then for him to immediately now have that hanging over the entire season, I would have to say that really jumps out in terms of what I'll remember about this. Even for this team that has had so much turnover from managers, like that one angle to it, it was just so bizarre, and it just took this really unique set of circumstances for him to, as has been reported, for him to express his dissatisfaction with the change in the front office, and then for the team to actually, at the ownership level, to say, all right, we see where you're coming from. We agree to like let you walk after this, even though you're under contract. So I think that is the one for sure. And with Arise, it's especially the timing of it too. For
Sure.
it to be so early in the season, you just do not see that so early to concede that this year is not that important, to flip somebody for all these players that could be part of your future, but definitely are not going to be part of your present season. For a guy that kind of like Skip is coming off the best season you could have possibly wanted from him the year before, and all of a sudden to be willing to turn around and move on from that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything else, Nate, along that vein that sticks out to you in terms of just storylines that really hung over this whole season?
Really just ushering in the new era, honestly. So many familiar faces, like Gabe pointed out. Jazz, who's been arguably the face of the franchise the past couple of years, he's gone. Luis Ariz, fan favorite, gone. And even before the season, I mean, losing like guys like Jorge Soler, that hurt. And just it's a whole new cast, honestly, a whole new bunch of top prospects. I'm definitely gonna remember maybe not the players themselves, but how many players they actually use. Of course, they broke the record. Guys like, I don't know, Christian Pache, Darren McCacken, all these guys that maybe in a year or two I probably won't even remember they played on the team. But just the fact that Marlins just used so many players, and it shows what Peter Bendis is going to do to this team. What else? It's just the start. Honestly, I think the month of March and April will definitely always stick out when I think about this team. Just the absolute brutal start that was. I mean, I thought this team, I predicted them win 80 games. It was probably some delusion mixed in there, but just how slow they started and how much of a gut punch really that first series against Pittsburgh and the following one against Los Angeles were. So yeah, the word disappointment for sure sticks out, but also, like I said, the start of ushering in what is the Peter Bendis era now in Miami.
But even to go along with this, like, I talk to a lot of my own family now. They don't follow the Marlins maybe as much as we do. They're all from Miami. They all live in Miami, and the complaint is the same every time. Every time that we're going to the playoffs, get ready for the iconic guys to go. And I kind of feel like they sort of did the same thing. And so just that aspect of building the trust is yet again another issue. So yeah, you're right, Nate. Absolutely.
From Carver on the minor league side, there is one positive that really does stick out that I think people remember, and that's the breakout of Thomas White, somebody that we had regarded as one of the best prospects in this organization entering the year, but for him to take the leap that he has made into being one of the very best lefty pitching prospects in baseball, one of the best that this organization has ever had. With him, is there anybody else like on this minor league system that had this kind of breakout year that you think will stick with us and see it as the start of a pretty big major league career down the road?
Well, I think he has the biggest major league future, if that's your question. But I think there's other guys that really prove themselves. Like what Sanoja did this year is insane. To go from barely playing in AA to AAA and now to the major leagues where he's still hitting pretty well. That's crazy. As a 22-year-old kid, that's insane. So I think what Sanoja did should stick out, even if he doesn't have the major league future of a starting player, all 160, 150 games. If he's more of a bench player, that's fine. But what he did this year, and he's going to be easy to get into games because he plays everywhere. But what that player did this year, there's a reason why he was the player of the year. It's because the Marlins came in with this new era that you're talking about with Rachel and Gabe and Peter and all these people, and they wanted to really push players that they thought were really ready. And they saw something in Sanoja that I don't think any of us saw. I thought Sanoja was a decent utility player coming into the season. We had him ranked low-end top 30 maybe, I think, in our preseason. And he proved us all, pretty much to be the fact that he's a top 15 prospect in this organization. Even still after their, midseason trade deadline that they did, that guy proved us to be like, he proved to us that he is deserving of a major league spot. And they gave it to him, which is great. And of course, the Marlins being a 100-loss team, second time in franchise history that they've lost 100 games, they didn't have anything to lose by calling him up. But still, they started a clock on a 22-year-old player. I hope that this is the start of the Marlins, and I think that it is, and I hope that it is, them starting to say, hey, it doesn't matter about roster control. It doesn't matter about days on the roster. It doesn't matter about, saving your year of arbitration or whatever it is. We're going to call you up when we think that you're ready. They did it with Sanoja. I hope they do it with more players. And this guy's proving why their faith should be renewed in players that are ready right now, because this guy's been great. I think other than Thomas, which we know has a great major league future, I think we could see him as early as next year, Eli. Honestly, I think he's deserving of it. We'll see what the Marlins decide to do with him. But yeah, he's been amazing. We talked to him. I wrote an article on him. Great guy, mature guy, all the talent in the world. I hope that Noble Meyer, who is growing up next to him, can kind of, and we know he has good stuff. I just think it's kind of the maturity level that needs to kind of rise a little bit with Noble. If he can get to Thomas's level, the Marlins will have two studs in that rotation for the long term, which is great. But every year on my birthday, I kind of remiss on the Marlins season that was. And this year, like last year, I was saying, okay, wow, they made the playoffs. Like things look to be pretty good. And this year we're kind of on the other opposite end of the spectrum where it's more about the future, which is okay. But I think the future is not as far away as some people may think.
This will depend a little on what happens with the player moving forward. But the Max Meyer fiasco is something that may stick with people's memories for a while. How outrageous it seemed in that moment to have him sent down to the minors after just 3 really great starts at the beginning of the year, to have him sent down to AAA to work on some things at a time where they didn't really have any rotation depth to replace him, for him to spend so much time in the minors and then to come back out the second half of the season and pitch really poorly. And he's actually hurt at this time. So it was injury on top of the insult that he even finished this year on the IL with a little shoulder concern. So it will depend where his career goes from here. If he puts it together as a starting pitcher and he turns out to be a long-term starter and has just a really productive career, then I think people will overlook that. If for whatever reason he doesn't find success there, and even as a reliever, even if he doesn't have a lot of success there, if he just never turns into a impactful big leaguer in any role, then I think people will point to that and say that whether it's physical or psychological, that the Marlins mishandled him and wasted a guy that was formerly the number 3 overall draft pick and somebody that was in that small sample already doing it well in the majors. That's a pretty wild story in that moment. And I think that was to a lot of people, even before the Arias trade. That was a few weeks before the Arias trade. And I think even then it rubbed so many people the wrong way.
Yeah, I think what we'll remember, honestly, like one of the things that I'll remember most, Eli, about this season is that they did some things that worked in terms of trades. Well, at least we hope so in terms of what they got back at the deadline. They did some things that we hope will work out. I think they swung some good trades. But at the beginning of the season, what most of the stuff that Peter Bendix did not work. Sixto Sanchez in the rotation didn't work. AJ Puck in the rotation, it didn't work. Tim Anderson, it didn't work. There's so many things that he did at the major league level to start this season that maybe he hoped would continue the Marlins in terms of being a perennial playoff candidate. They just didn't work. So I think that's the level. That right there is what I just said, the preseason stuff that he did this year that didn't really work. And yes, it's a new guy getting used to a new team, and he's a new guy in town, and there's new people here. I understand. But I think that's where a lot of fans' frustration lied, is that a lot of, or most of what he did on the major league side in the preseason, it really spelled the doom for the Marlins. So I think that's where the Marlins will need to improve, especially with a year of familiarity under his belt. I think that's where Peter Bendix himself will admit that he needs to kind of improve as we go into 2025.
The Sixto storyline is another one that I think I'll remember for a while, just because of how highly regarded he was back in 2020, how good he was in 2020 when he was in the rotation, how he disappeared in a way that so few players have for 3 full years, just being sidelines by shoulder-related issues and potentially just some work ethic-related issues, then resurfacing in spring training. I was in spring training. I made a quick visit, and I saw him pitch in person, and he looked really good as a reliever. He ends up making the opening day roster, and then it really just didn't have any success whatsoever. was probably on that roster a little bit too long, and then they essentially hit him on the phantom IL for the portion of the season. I know it irks Carver and probably some other people as well that we give so much attention to somebody that simply was not close to recapturing the player he used to be. How excited, Gabe, were you at various points, whether it was during spring training or when he made the team? Did you ever actually have any real expectations for Sixto turning it around and pulling off this really crazy comeback?
So I know that several people on the Fish on First crew, the expectations were quite low.
Yes.
But there was this thing in the back of my mind that I was just like, there's gonna be like some crazy like come up story. Like this is gonna be wild. And like, I'm on Twitter one day, and I think it was Isaac said something about Sixto throwing 99 or 100 or something like that. Him coming into the dugout, everybody like shaking his hand and giving him hugs and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. But then after that, it was just kind of like, really, it was after spring training. Oh my gosh, it was a train wreck. And honestly, like from a purely like psychological and like human perspective, I feel for the guy. To like my 3 years of, like you're saying, being sidelined and whatever, to being at a point where you now have the opportunity again, and it's just bomb after bomb after bomb, and it's just not going well. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of tragic, honestly. It's tragic.
I think something else we should mention on a positive side, we may remember the Griffin Conine experience, him getting called up. You can speak on that, Carver, because as much as you admired his father for all the years he spent, and you covered Griffin very closely these last handful of years, we were pretty honest about how our expectations for him were relatively low. All of a sudden, there's opportunity just blows wide open for him with all the guys they traded away, with all the injuries they had on the hitting side. As we speak, I think he's starting this third to last game. He's been starting a lot, especially against right-handed pitching down the stretch, and he's been like a league average hitter. So I think that whole storyline of joining the Weathers, Ryan and David, as becoming just the second father-son duo to play for this team, and at least for now, I think at the very least, he has put himself in a very good position to be a part of 2025 in some form or fashion and have an actual major league career.
Yeah. I will say, picking up guys, I mean, I didn't even know this dude existed, Otto Lopez. I mean, aside from his slump, he was kind of, I have found him to be a great pickup. Finding little holes here and there, I feel like that's been kind of cool. None of it is we're not moving the needle necessarily, but I mean, we can recruit all the second basemen in the world. It's amazing, but we can't find a shortstop. That's a whole other podcast for another day, I guess.
Just because you brought up Otto, I don't know if we'll see, but as of now, it's Tanner Scott. Depending on how you calculate this is Baseball Reference War. It's Tanner Scott as the most valuable player on this team, and then it's Otto Lopez at number 2, right there. A lot of it because of his defense, but as you said, aside from the middle of the season where he really slumped, he was good early on. He's been really good over the last month and a half. He's been hitting like 300 with solid on-base skills, and he steals a lot of bases. He's up to 20 steals on the season as well for a waiver claim for a guy that was discarded. And as you see that as somebody who wasn't even in big league spring training and is still wearing his AA Pensacola hat in this photo, Valente Belloso, he's been really good. He just finished out his rookie year. And for that one, I have some concerns about what that looks like in the future and whether he could keep it up. But it is for his performance coupled with just the intangible part of it and the energy he brings, the vibes that he has on the mounds. I think that's something that really captured people's attention. He did his best to take advantage of this wide open opportunity that they had in the rotation.
Yeah, for a guy like Otto, I caught up with him. Oh, go ahead, Trevor. Sorry.
No, I was just going to mention about Griffin before we get too far. I think he's proven that he could be a good hitter against, or a decent hitter against righties. We haven't really seen him hit against lefties at all. I think it's only been like a few at bats, right? But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that, last night was cool to see him come up in a big spot. That was cool. And of course, me being the Conine guy that I am and always have been since my youth, and then covering him in high school, which was awesome. It's cool to see this guy in the major leagues. I mean, there's no reason not to have him here. But for him to try, pretty much kind of start to spell out the fact that he can succeed in some facet at the major league level, even if it's only against righty, even if it's as a bench player. I think he has a good arm. He's kind of showed that a little bit as well. I think that it's cool to see that he is showing that he can have a major league future, because during his minor league career, there were some people that questioned whether he is a major league player or he isn't. So for him to kind of start to show that at age 26, whatever he is, I think that that's important. So is he a starting player on next year's team? I don't think so, but I think that he will definitely challenge for a 26-man roster spot, possibly be on the bench as a righty, or I'm sorry, as a righty hitting, as a left-handed hitting righty mashing kind of guy. I think that can be his forte, at the most median level, and maybe he can turn into more in the future. But no, I think it's cool to see that what this guy has done so far is cool, and I'm glad that he got a chance to do it. So it's cool to see. But I would kind of say that he's kind of that more median level prospect in terms of like his overall future value. But it's cool to see him do what he's doing right now. I think that he deserved this chance, and he's gotten in, and he's done well.
You wanted to say something on Otto, Nate?
Yeah, I caught up with him on Saturday. I'm gonna have a piece about that this weekend. But yeah, you touched on that slump, Gabe. Just he told me about how much he really leaned on his teammates and how well they really meshed together as a core. I brought up the younger guys like Griffin, like Xavier, like Connor, and how well they really got to know each other. And I think Otto's a very, very nice guy, and he's honestly a pretty good leader in that clubhouse, from what I understand. But yeah, just you also touched on it. Just how many guys, I mentioned this I think maybe last stream or 2 streams ago, but Peter Bendis just pretty much just picks stuff, throws them at the wall, sees what sticks with all these waiver claims. And a couple of them have. Of course, Otto, you have John McMillan in the bullpen, Jesus Tinoco, plenty of other guys I'm probably forgetting about, but Otto is definitely the headliner. I mean, number 2 on the team in WAR. If you were to tell me Otto Lopez was going to be number 2 on the team in terms of baseball reference WAR on opening day, I don't know what I would have told you. Yeah. But the fact that guy is so good defensively, he's kind of like John Birdie Light, in my opinion, with probably better defense, but worse contact, maybe, and of course the worst speed, but still can spike you some bags. And yeah, elite defense can put the ball in play, drive in some runs like he did yesterday. So very impressed with him, and I think he's going to have a role in the team next year as well.
Yeah.
Let us go into our break with our final flipped fish of the season. We have Isaac Azut up in Toronto covering, so I made an Isaac Azut themed flipped fish, the player that is near and dear to his heart. It's a relatively easy one right here, but we pick a guy that's been part of their major league career with both the Marlins and the Blue Jays. This one, I think he's retired, either recently retired or just, out of the picture, off the grid right now. I give just a 2 out of 10 level of difficulty for this former Marlin and Blue Jay right here. Shortstop, second baseman, third baseman. He's now 35 years old. He played in the big leagues from 2012 to 2020. And not much of a hitter overall, depending on how you remember those days. Some of us remember him being a better hitter than he actually was, or a better defender than he actually was. I know Isaac does. But
this is the Isaac special.
Yes, this Cuban infielder who did spend time with both of these organizations during his career. So think it over during the break. We'll come back with a reveal, and we'll finish up this season finale of FOF Live. So stick with us.
We have been representing people injured as a result of other people's negligence for over 50 years here in South Florida. If you get injured as a result of somebody else's negligence, it can be a car accident, it can be a slip and fall, medical malpractice, negligent security. If somebody else's negligence caused an injury to either you or one of your loved ones, give us a call. Our phone number is on our page, our website is on our page, and our email addresses are on our page. Please give us a call for a free consultation. We'd love to help you. Let Zach and I protect your rights.
He actually played in the Mexican leagues this year, Eli, and he wasn't even good. So I know that Isaac loves this guy. He wasn't even good in the Mexican League this year.
I should have known that. I think I did see that, and it must have slipped my mind. So it is, as you guys know, and as LMF knows, Danny Echeverria.
Yeah.
Who debuted with Blue Jays in 2012, right before he got traded over in that 12-player deal, and then spent parts of 5 years in Miami.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoyed that guy so much defensively, man. Watching that guy, he was cool.
I think everybody did. Yeah. His cool factor may have outweighed his production a little bit. But
Don't tell
that
us
matters. And this is a team right now that has one big question about the future of this team is the shortstop position. And it is very important to have a guy that, if nothing else, is pretty steady defensively at that spot. They've been looking for somebody like that over these last 2 years, ever since Miggy Rowe left. Yeah, this is off topic, but I was looking at Miguel Rojas's numbers this year, and it is so he's the same age as Echeverria is right now. He's 35, and he is having the best year of his career by a pretty big margin in LA right now in terms of.
Is he still getting the same amount of at bats though? Like he's playing every day. He's starting.
He's playing a little bit less. So that's part of it. He's playing less, but when he is playing, he's been awesome. He's like setting his career highs in almost every relevant category. As a 35-year-old shortstop, whereas like, this is Etch is a typical 35-year-old shortstop where you're usually not in the big leagues at that stage anymore. Yeah. And for Miggy Rowe to still be thriving, and we'll see if if he has enough time left in his career. Not the craziest thing to imagine him coming back to Miami now that Jazz is out of the way. Now there's none of that resistance in the clubhouse that he'd be facing. We'll see. But that just popped into my mind. I'm just saying what Miggy Rowe has been up to. So this is, by my count, the 14th different ballpark that we're going to have in-person coverage in. As in the history, almost all of these are since we rebranded as Fish on First, but I think some of these date back to the Fish Stripes days, which was early 2023 and prior to that. So this is my count of like all the road ballparks we've been to Milwaukee, from top to down, Milwaukee, Arizona, the Mets, Philly, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Reds, the Padres, the Pirates, now the Blue Jays with Isaac, the Rays, the Braves, the Cubs, and the Yankees. Nate, which one that's not on the list? Where do you want to expand our horizons in the future and conquer new territory that we haven't gotten to already? There's still a lot to choose from.
That is a great question. Let's see here. Well, since it is the furthest away, I do have family over in the Seattle metro area, so I'd say T-Mobile Park they call it now. I believe. I think that's a great stadium. Of course, it's like I said, the farthest away. So, and of course, I'm just the beautiful scenery that is Seattle and obviously the coast. So I'd say if I had to really pick one out, it's definitely might be the hardest one to end up doing. But maybe if I'm had to Seattle for a summer, I'd probably knock one out there if it all lines up. But I'd say I'd do Seattle.
Camden Yards is a good suggestion as well in terms of one of those those inner circle great ballparks.
That's probably that's a good call.
So Gabe, you're in Nashville. How often do you get out to major league games? Do you come down to Miami or do you stop closer by? How often do you ingest? You don't have Major League Baseball yet. Maybe in the near future you will over there.
Lord willing. So me and my wife we'll drive either to a Cardinals game, which that's an amazing park. I love that park. Mm-hmm. We'll go to a Reds game. I don't enjoy that park. Or we'll go to a Braves game. And I try to go when the Marlins are playing all of these guys. Sometimes I'll go just because I got that itch, but that's normally what I got to do. If not, I'm watching AAA Sounds games, which I'm fine with. And like the experience at a Sounds game is actually really enjoyable. You got the skyline right there, behind the field. It's great. But in terms of like that, like true major league experience, normally my wife likes going to Braves games, so we'll go to a Braves game. The Battery's fun. I wish the Marlins could have done something like that instead of just sticking it in the middle of Little Havana. But no, we'll go down to Miami too every time we go to see family. And if I can catch a Marlins game, I will. Yeah.
Pretty solid year for Tyler Black, Wright State University alum Tyler Black at the AAA level. Let's go.
Oh yeah.
We're running out. Who's next with the Wright State University pipeline? I wonder. You love those guys, but I think it's been a few years since they got somebody drafted that really is on the radar.
Jake Strand was the last one. He's on the 60-day injured list, so that's the last one in the Marlins pipeline right now. And on the horizon, I'll have to research it. But Tyler Black's been good for the Brewers. He made his major league debut, but he spent most of the year in AAA. But he was good for the Sounds this year.
Yeah. I do want to talk some postseason stuff. This is our last stream before the start of the playoffs, which is already on Tuesday. And that's created some headaches for baseball because they need to squeeze in, they need to decide those Braves, Mets debacle for that final wild card spot likely on Monday. And then immediately the wild card race series are starting right after that. But thankfully, the Marlins added some clarity to this, barring like a really shocking collapse. It looks like it'll be the Tigers, Astros, Guardians, Royals, Orioles, and Yankees on the American League side. And for the moment, that's what it looks like on the NL side. Definitely the Dodgers, definitely the Phillies, definitely the Brewers, definitely the Padres, and then it's the D-backs, the Mets, and the Braves. 3 teams for those final 2 wild card spots. As usual, there are a lot of former Marlins spread around here. Just off the top of my head, it's Stanton and Jazz in New York. It is Emmanuel Rivera in Baltimore. I don't think people realize that. He is still over there. They also have Trevor Rogers in the minors on the 40-man roster. Maybe he comes up at some point if they make it deep enough in the playoffs and need an extra arm.
Has he been terrible?
He was terrible in August and then got sent down. And then he was really he collapsed in his very first game at the AAA level. And then after that, he finished off the season on a kind of high note, but at AAA. So I don't know what to make of that at all.
We stole from
I think that one deal, every time you check in on it, and we're talking the day after Connor Norby had a 5 strikeout game, but there's really nothing that can happen at this point to change the idea that the Marlins didn't really give up much of anything at all. And they got at least 1, if not 2, really interesting long-term hitters there. In Kansas City, Garrett Hampson is there. Believe it or not. I don't think he plays a very big role over there, but he is in the mix for them. I think the Guardians are one of those teams that have virtually no Marlins connection right there. But for most of these other teams, you
didn't even mention Yuli Gurriel.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
I forgot about him. Yeah.
He's not only there, he is batting in the middle of their lineup on most nights, believe it or not, down the stretch while they wait to get their actual first baseman, Vinny Pasquantino, back there. Yeah.
It's crazy to think, man, like we were in this spot last year and here we are 100 losses, man. What a joke.
Yeah. It doesn't happen very often. I think now that we're on the Royals, if you want to look at it very optimistically, the Royals last year, they lost 106 games and then all of a sudden they're back here again. Now, that took a lot of, more so than anything else, that took a Bobby Witt Jr. to be in the middle of their team. It took having one of the best players in baseball establish himself, and it took a lot of spending in free agency to build most of their rotation came via free agency, and all of those guys have played out pretty well for them. It's possible just to go when you can make that big crash from one year and then recover if really everything aligns with your acquisitions and there's the intent to get back right away.
You mentioned Bobby Witt Jr., who was selected, of course, right ahead of JJ Blay in that 2019 draft. A lot of the teams in the race right now, the Orioles, the Royals, the Tigers, I mean, even Arizona, they started the rebuild the same time the Marlins did, around 2018, 2019. And here they are. I wouldn't say they're perennial playoff contenders. I mean, maybe not Detroit, who had by the way, just a ridiculous run in the month of September. But it's just like Gabe said, it's crazy to think about how some of these teams started right when the Marlins did. And they got their guys. I mean, Detroit got Riley Green, Baltimore got Adley Rutschman, and of course, Kansas City got Bobby Witt. So it just goes to show you really how far apart these franchises are now, just 5 years later.
Yeah.
I know you're going to mention the National League, Eli, but I want to point something out before you do. Alex Vesia. Everybody told me that I was overreacting when the Marlins traded Alex Vesia and didn't really like that trade for Dylan Floro. Go look what Alex Vesia is doing this season.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's been fantastic, not just this season, but for most of his seasons. It's now been 4 years with Alex Vesia in the Dodgers bullpen. It was a 2.25 ERA in the first year. It was a 2.15 ERA in the second year. Then last year he slumped. He was like a league average pitcher, spent some time in the minors, 4.35. And then this year, better than ever, 1.79 with 5 saves as well for that Dodgers team that is just clinched the NL West division. He also, he's just, there's really nothing that you can do to knock him. He is not just really effective, but really entertaining to watch. Yeah. He's really enthusiastic on the mound, and he's a homegrown Marlin that was a super late round draft pick. I mean, he burst onto the scene right before that trade happened, and has been part of their group. So it's him. It's Mickey Rowe, as we mentioned. He's with the Dodgers. They even have Austin Barnes, former Marlin, over there in a small capacity. The Padres, Tanner Scott, Brian Hoeing, and of course Luis Ariz. I imagine that a lot of people, if they had to choose one team, just because of the Ariz, how unique he was as a player and how valuable he was just last season, that their rooting interest, if they had to choose, would be there. That's really why I brought this up, though. I didn't want to go through every single roster. I'm just curious, I guess starting with Gabe, if there is a particular team that has your full, maybe not full, but if you have a preference in terms of who you'd like to see make a deep run this year of these teams.
Honestly, I'm gonna throw a really big wild card out there. I'm kind of going for Detroit. There's a part of me that I'm like, man, I really would love to see them. I want to see how far they go. I want to see how they do against, a pretty established playoff team, the Astros, the Guardians later. If they continue, I'm shooting for more of the underdogs. Like, I also want to see Baltimore go further than they did. I would love to see them go all the way. I would love it to be Baltimore and Philadelphia. Oh man, that'd be pretty dope. I hate the Dodgers. I hate the Yankees. But never mind me. Anyways.
If I had to go backwards,
but didn't I know he got hurt again, which I guess that lends to his name. But didn't Kyle Hurt also make his major league debut for the Dodgers this year? I'm pretty sure he did. That was another member of that Dylan Floro trade.
Yeah, yes, and then true to his name, he got hurt. So he's really not played at all this year, unfortunately, because of that. But he has nasty stuff when healthy.
But still, I think we can call that trade a loss. Anyways, we can go on. Go ahead.
I am curious. The Mets. How much did they dump off last year when they absolutely tanked?
That was getting rid of both Scherzer and Verlander last year at the same.
And it was David Robertson.
That's right.
I only ask that because I think it's really interesting how the owner spent so much money before 2023, dumps off all these guys, and now all of a sudden they're here. What a coincidence. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting, seeing how that all kind of shapes up and plays out. I thought that was interesting. And obviously, like, Lindor is killing it. Is he not?
Yeah, that's been a big factor, is having his best year since he's been with the Mets.
Yeah. No, for sure. The question is, where does Pete Alonso go?
Yeah, it's going to be a big question for their offseason, and this could be his final. I think he's the longest tenured guy that they have at this point because of all the trades that they've made. I guess him and Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo is probably, and he's been, both of those guys at various times have been big Marlins killers in head-to-head games.
I had heard that Bendix was having conversations with Pete Alonso. He's going to scoop him up for like $5 for like 10 years. So never going to happen.
No. For you, Nate, is there any particular rooting interest that you have, or just what do you think would be the most fun outcome for the postseason?
Well, of course, all the former Marlins, like the Padres you mentioned, but I really sneaky former Marlin. I interviewed him earlier this year. Freddie Gonzalez, the bench coach of the Baltimore Orioles, with all that young talent like Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson, of course, Anthony Santander, all those guys. I'm a huge fan of Baltimore. Like we touched on Camden Yards, I was there a couple years ago. That's an amazing stadium. Fan base is amazing. I would have no problem seeing Baltimore win it all. I'd say for most exciting, I think if you put a Baltimore into a team like Philly, like you mentioned, I think that'd be awesome. But even this, I want to mention the first round of the wild card. There's so many interesting storylines. Of course, the Mets and the Padres meeting they met a couple years ago with who was that? Was that Joe Musgrove in the ear thing? That was weird. The D-bats and the Brewers met a year ago, and that was obviously in the D-bats' favor. AJ Hinch facing his former team in Detroit, and then of course Adley Rutschman versus Bobby Wood Jr. That series is going to be magnificent if it stays this way. So. Yeah, AL definitely going for the Orioles, and the NL, of course, with Tanner Scott and Brian Hohen and Luis Rise. I'd probably say if I had to pick a team, I'd go with the Padres.
I have to go with the Yankees as my preference, not just because I was originally a Yankees fan early on, but because my dad still is a very diehard Yankees fan.
Mm-hmm.
He's had to wait 15 years to see them win a World Series. Can you imagine that? The torture of having to go 15 years without seeing your team get that far. I feel for him. He takes these losses very personally. Last year, missing the postseason entirely. What an embarrassment for the Yankees. If it makes him happy to get them over the hump, at least for one time, and then once they do that, maybe they spend too much on Juan Soto, and all of a sudden they can't put together a great roster in the future. If they put so many chips into push them all to the middle of the table for this year and have that one moment led by that incredible duo of Judge and Soto in the middle there.
Yeah.
As well. Just, yeah, I think they'd be a worthy champion. And that's what makes it so fun is that there's just no prohibitive favorite this year. There's no team that's going to win 100 games this year or really come all that close to winning it. Like the separation in win totals between the best teams in the postseason and the worst is a lot smaller than it usually is. And that just leads itself to chaos and to a lot of parity in these games, especially in these short series. Well, it's a best of 3 format now for most of these teams coming out in the wild card next week. So I think I just love those circumstances where we find ourselves in a situation that it could go in so many different directions. There really is not an insane prediction to make when it comes to who's actually going to prevail, just because of how closely packed these teams are so far.
Do you think the Yankees make it all the way, Eli?
I have no idea. I think they have the ability to do so. I think they screwed up I thought they would make such a logical landing spot for Tanner Scott at the deadline, and that they just didn't invest enough in the bullpen. That I think that is going to be kind of a vulnerability that compared to a lot of these teams, especially on the American League side, compared to the Guardians, I'd say the Guardians and the Tigers are the two teams that both of them have a lot deeper bullpens than the Yankees do. If the Yankees they're just going to have to be really dominant offensively and just hit a bunch of homers, because otherwise I don't think they're going to be in trouble in the later innings if they don't have a lead in that situation.
Yeah.
With about 10 minutes.
I'll chime in and say that I'm wholeheartedly with Nate on the Orioles. Not only because this team is super fun to watch, but because they did it from within. They built all of these guys up themselves. Every single one of those star players that are on that team, except for Corbin Burns, I guess. But other than him, they did pretty much everything themselves. Every single player on that team, Adley, Jackson, Gunnar, all of these players, even Dean Kramer in the rotation, all of these players, they built those guys from within. So that is amazing. It is awesome to see that. You absolutely love to see that out of an organization that knows how to develop minor league baseball players into star players. And that's exactly what the Baltimore Orioles did. It's exactly, even Santander, they built him as well. Cowser, all of these players, they did it themselves. So they built that roster themselves. They did it from within. That is an awesome model that the Marlins should try to follow in the future. And then on the opposite side, you have, on the coaching side, I guess I should say, it's such a superior parallel because Brandon Hyde is managing that baseball team, and he won a championship with the Double-A then Jacksonville Suns. So there's your Marlins connection in that regard as well. So awesome. Love the Orioles. That's a great model for the Marlins to try to follow. That team is super fun to watch. They haven't won since 83. Let's go in 2024. Orioles.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to see Emmanuel Rivera get a ring? Like, come on, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, Emmanuel Rivera can get a World Series ring. There you go.
That was one of the more surprising transactions I've seen this year, because when the Marlins DFA somebody, I have a pretty good idea about whether they're going to be claimed by somebody else or just fall through the cracks. And he was somebody that I had on the list for not being of interest to a contending team. And the fact that he's on their roster and playing as much as he is, he's outplaying, among other guys, Jackson Holliday, the former number one top prospect in baseball. They don't play the exact same position, but because Rivera, at least in certain matchups against lefties, is the better hitter, they are kind of equivalent pieces of this team. And I did not see that coming at this stage. So we will maybe have Isaac Azut popping in these final few minutes, but I did want to give an extended setup for our prediction time finale. The prediction time 2024 championship belt being decided tonight. So let's get into that.
This is prediction time.
I don't want to toot my own horn here, but I'm really good at this.
Here's our current state of affairs. This is the 52nd and final series of the Marlins regular season. Every time we do series predictions, how many games the Marlins are going to win, who the series MVP is going to be, it is a 4-horse race at the very end right here. Those are the profile photos of our remaining contenders: Daniel Rodriguez, Fish on First staffer, and 3 of our super subs, 10 of Spades, BK, Sean Millerick, and Rings. They are all within 2 points of each other, a maximum of 3 points they can get for their predictions in this series.
Wow.
It is coming down to the wire right there to show you what they have in mind for this series. I got 3 of them. From Rings, having the Marlins win 2 out of 3 with Jake Berger as his MVP. Daniel Rodriguez, the Blue Jays winning 2 out of 3 with Vladdy as his MVP. 10 of Spades, VK. Marlins winning 2 out of 3. Xavier Edwards as his MVP. And I have a DM that I received just minutes ago from Sean Millerick that did not make the graphic, but he has the Marlins winning 2 out of 3. Griffin Conine as his MVP. It could go any way between these top 4. On the line, what these men are fighting for at this very end is one of these ultra popular teal starter jackets that came out earlier this year. And one of them is going to win. It is now back in stock in all sizes, as we have Isaac Azut just in time for prediction time from Rogers Center. Very quickly, why don't you just get us caught up on your experience there? As we showed earlier in the show, all of the ballparks that you've conquered in your coverage the last couple of years. How does this compare to where else you've been so far?
Well, the thing that stands out the most, I assume you guys can hear me all right, is that this press box is not behind home plate. We are down the left field line in foul territory. Let me briefly show you the field.
Oh. Very
interesting dynamic that I look forward to watching the game from. Other than that, pretty beautiful ballpark, I must say. Recently underwent renovations here earlier, but it really has been a nice treat to be in Toronto for the first time.
I think Isaac will have to mute himself for a couple minutes because we have not only the national anthem, but we have "Oh Canada" back to back. That's the risk that you run when you play in Toronto, is you got to sit through 2 songs back to back like that. We'll keep him on through the end of that anthem right there as we close in on first pitch from Toronto between these teams. Anything else that I can get to on here?
Talking about the first time they've been in Toronto in 9 years now. It's been a very long time.
Yeah, that is true. I had not realized that. I believe that this is the one ballpark that they had not been to in that long. All their other long droughts ended these last couple of years during the new schedule, where it's every team plays every team. So this is this has been one of the exceptions so far. They've somehow stayed away from crossing the border.
Yeah, I did want to ask him. This is now the 30th ballpark that he has managed in. I didn't ask him. Maybe after tonight's game, tomorrow pregame, I'll ask him. Just, that milestone, whether how small now, obviously you guys mentioned, you guys are playing every single team every single year. but still, it is something to touch on for him, I think.
A great catch from LMF. They did play road games against the Blue Jays during the COVID season, but that is when, due to COVID restrictions, they couldn't get guys to Canada. So the Blue Jays played their home games at their AAA Buffalo ballpark at Salem Park or Salem Field or whatever. And Magnera Sierra had like a game-winning hit in extra innings. And Francisco Cervelli had, I remember that series. It's weirdly specific memories I have of that 2020 series in that minor league ballpark that they played under those circumstances. Without further ado, even though all of us are non-contenders for the prediction time crown, we still need to make our picks for this one. So you know how this works. I'll cue up the music, and we're going to start off. We'll start off with Isaac over there in Toronto for this series.
Alrighty. I believe that the Marlins are going to win 2 out of 3 in their final series of the year. Tonight is the one day they lose. And I'm going to give series MVP to Game 1 Season 2 veteran Ryan Weathers.
Alex Carver, your predictions. Go ahead.
Well, because I'm so bought into the future, I will say that we end the season on a fabulous note. And the Marlins sweep the series. And against his former organization, Griffin Conine is the MVP.
Nate Cardsmer, your picks.
The Marlins will finish 2024 on a high note. They're going to go into Toronto and take 2 out of 3. My series MVP is also an ex-Blue Jay, also a native of Canada, Yimiano Lopez. We talked about him earlier. He's had an amazing season to finish 2024 out on the highest note possible. He's going to get his old team back.
All right, Gabe, you know how this works. Go ahead.
My prediction is 2 out of 3 Miami, and then Jake Berger's going to do what Jake Berger does and be the MVP of the series. So that's my take.
I'm like everybody else. The last series of the season, the same as the first, irrationally confident. If people remember, the Marlins lost that first series of the season against the Pirates at home, but in the same way, with nothing to lose at this point, I will go with the Marlins somehow winning the series 2 out of 3 in Toronto. I'll give Xavier Edwards MVP honors. He has been so steady this season. It'd be great to see him finish off this year on a high note. For the Marlins themselves to only lose 101 games as long as they take 2 out of 3, and send Skip, if he moving on to the next chapter, to send him out as well on a competitive note. It's been fun to see how driven the Marlins have been to compete down the stretch with nothing to gain and really nothing to lose. They remain a really spunky and competitive group. So I think they'll continue through the very end this season to be just the way they have been all season long. That will do it. Prediction time for our 2024 FOF live season coverage. 52 series that we've covered on here. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thanks to everybody that has tuned in consistently, including Parrish. It's a whole lot of coverage just on the other side of the end of this regular season. There's no big stop sign for us. It's just a transition. There's plenty of time to talk about Luis Leon, to talk about international free agency, to talk about the Rule 5 draft, to talk about everything from all levels of the organization, to talk about the managerial and coaching situation, if that does in fact change in the coming days. To yeah, everything big and small, we got it covered on Fish on First. You can find our full coverage on fishonfirst.com. We'll have a whole lot of video coverage as well and streams. Marlins Jeopardy. We haven't done enough Marlins Jeopardy. We'll do some more trivia shows as well in the very near future. So it's been, I think we've tried our best to keep it fun and to keep it informative for you guys. I'm not going to pretend that it has been a good year for the team, but just 1 year. And it's just an ongoing cycle of coverage, everything being interconnected. And we appreciate everybody that has been along with us so far. Hope you stick with us as we move forward into the offseason and beyond. Thanks to Gabe for joining us as well.
Thank you.
As he does every year at this exact time. To Nate, and to Alex Carver, myself, Eli Sussman, to our partners at Berger and Hicks for sponsoring this show throughout the entire season, and for everybody in the live chat as well. So we will talk soon. We'll get back to you about the exact machinations of our off-season schedule, but rest assured it's going to be very busy. Okay. So that'll do it. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy everything that happens beyond that. Go Canes as well. Stay safe from the actual hurricane if you are potentially in their path. And as always, go Fish.
Have a wonderful evening.